Thank you so much for tuning into the Maintainers State of the Union panel. I am here with a number of maintainers representing different platforms across the open source maintainer ecosystem. And we're going to chat today about a number of things, including what we owe each other as open source maintainers. I'm going to just kick it off and introduce myself. I'm Lyn, maintainer advocate here at Tidelift. I'm here to be the voice of maintainers. So this is an exciting day for me, an exciting time to really get and share and talk about, what's happening in the open source maintainer community currently. What are some great things about it? What are some things we'd love to change, and just sort of have an open dialogue about, what we're looking to kind of do in the future. So I am joined by a number of amazing talents, and I would love to get started by having you all just kind of introduce yourself. So if you can just go around, introduce yourself, your project, and your domain, of focus, I would really appreciate that. So whoever wants to jump in, feel free to kick it off.
Sure, yeah. So my name is John Leider. I'm the author and founder of a UI library named Vuetify, which is a JavaScript framework, which is based on a JavaScript framework, Vue.js. And yeah, I primarily focus on JavaScript, TypeScript, and in the Vue ecosystem.
Yeah, I'll go. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeffrey A. Clark. I go by Alex. I'm the creator of Python Pillow, which is an imaging library for the Python programming language.
Don't everyone jump out at once. Jordan,
I'll go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I maintain a couple hundred NPM libraries, NVM as well. I'm on TC39, the JavaScript Standards Committee, and I do a lot of work in the Node arena as well. Yeah.
Cool. I'll go next. Brian, go by bdougie on the internet, bdougie on GitHub. I work at GitHub as a developer, director of developer advocacy. So we help folks leverage tools in open source. I also maintain a tool called Open Source, which is a pathway to your next open source contribution. And the goal there is really just to expose projects and get people to contribute.
And my name is Reinier Zwitserloot from the Netherlands. I think I'm the only non-American in the chat. I maintain, together with a friend who unfortunately couldn't be here, Project Lombok, which is a Java. It's basically a plugin for your compiler. So we have quite a few users. It just makes it slightly easier to write Java code. And I'm here to represent that part of the community.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Greatly appreciate your time, talent, and your voice today. So I want to kick it off by just learning about your journeys. What does a typical day, like maintaining your package, kind of going through the motions, what does a typical day look like for you?
Were we all just jumping in? Because if so, I will say that I love NVM, so thank you. And I review GitHub issues. Mostly. I'm part or lead of a 4-person team, and of those, 2 people do most of the work. And so we do quarterly releases. So in between that time, I'm checking my filtered mails. I used to just tune out completely for 3 months, but now I actually stay pretty in tune and review the traffic, which is fairly significant, but probably not huge, relatively speaking, and try to poke at interesting things along the way, as well as deal with security issues, which again, Tidelift, thank you. Tidelift does most of the work there, aside from the actual fixes, which we do.
Yeah, hooking into that, I spend, I think, 60% of all my time maintaining Lombok just on the issue tracker. That's probably because it's a tool where lots of people ask for feature requests. And the problem with feature requests is if you just blindly accept them all, you basically get into this combinatory explosion of features that is not great for the learning curve for a project like what Lombok does. So I actually do spend quite a bit of time explaining what would be required for us to take a feature request more seriously, which usually involves, if you do like a scan on GitHub, and this is a very common pattern, we might support it. Also, these are like open technical questions, which are currently meaning that we don't want to do it. Which helps, I think, because then the community knows. Yeah, I would prefer to say, look, this is a really nice feature request. We're not doing it, instead of sort of leading people on. I would rather squash all hope, I guess, instead of sort of leaving the intention around it. People think, oh, maybe if I send a PR, then they will accept it. And that's good, because it does lead to, when we say a PR is welcome, they know we mean it, right? But that does take a lot of time. It helps a little bit that Lombok is, in that sense, a done project. All the features that we have work great, and it works as is. I mean, if there are good feature ideas, we would love to add them. It's not that there are like huge open spaces where we think, okay, this is like, there's a gap here and we need to finish it. So that means over time, I think every year I spend slightly more time on issues and less time on programming. I'm not sure if that's a thing of a project that's 10 years old at this point, or if that's just more a general trend.
I see a lot of nods. John, what's your typical day look like?
Usually it involves getting up pretty early and working with most of the development team is not in my time zone area. So I'm in Texas, United States, but we have people in Sweden, Australia. So typically most of the time that I work with them is on like odd hours. I mean, after working with them, between checking GitHub issues and pull requests, since we're on the verge of a large release, so spending a lot of time in there and in the community talking with developers as they work through it. Spend time interacting with and reaching out to sponsors, make sure that we have the proper funding, and then usually I get to finish up with doing some coding myself, and I've been lately working a lot in Figma, doing some rebuilding our design UI kit for version 3, and kind of getting my hands dirty and working in design stuff. So it's usually about a typical day.
Thank you for that. And Brian, I know that you work with both the contributor and maintainer community in ways. Can you tell us about your typical day?
Yeah, I mean, my typical day is very different. So like I've actually met with some folks here on the call. Like we do these calls at GitHub, asking questions about how to improve the product or sharing new features that are shipping. So if we haven't chat with you, definitely DM me and find me and we can get you in the list. And yeah, what really just engaging community. I get a lot of DMs about GitHub Actions randomly because I have a lot of content on that. So trying to unblock random use cases for projects that we've all heard of. And then I do spend 2 days a week working on my open source side project, Wednesdays and Fridays. So I've been able to sort of shoehorn my time since I joined GitHub to be able to do that. And then this coordinate with, I've got my main contributor, or actually co-maintainer at this point, is in Romania, and just working with the engineer in Bangladesh to help with some UI stuff. So we just kind of mostly do async conversations through Discord, ironically, but we also use GitHub issues to chat and like make sure we're all on the same page on this is broken. The more context, open source is like a suite of tools to improve contributions. So we do take a lot of really junior contributors and then help coerce them into like actually writing better PRs or issues and stuff like that. With intention, that's our goal. Like we want people to give us bad PRs to teach them how to do better PRs.
Big fan of open source. Thank you so much for that contribution and for all of your contributions. Jordan, what's your typical day look like?
Yeah, I have a GitHub notifications tab open on every device I own. I spend most of my free time just refreshing it, seeing what new pops up. My projects are kind of in a lot of different buckets. And so some of them are often like done. There's very little to do there. They don't need a lot of maintenance other than updating dependencies occasionally. And there's no feature requests really. Like I have a lot of small, like a package where it's just a predicate function. It just answers a question with a true or false. There's no feature requests to be had there, which is wonderful. And then I have like ESLint plugins where there's just a constant influx of, here's my code, this rule is doing the wrong thing, or how do I make this rule do this thing that it doesn't do? So, a mix of bugs and feature requests, and there's a lot of questions in there that require kind of teasing out what the real issue is. And it often doesn't require any programming on my end to fix. We just have to figure out what's wrong with their configuration or something. I think that I totally agree with what Reinier was saying, that my goal with a feature request is to crush hope in the most morale in preserving way possible. In other words, I want somebody to walk away understanding why their request isn't a good idea or won't work or shouldn't be accepted. And I want them to still feel positive enough to come back and keep contributing to the project. I would say most of my effort is spent trying to maximize the chances that somebody is going to continue contributing. Of course, that is zero under my control. And the results are mixed, but that is my hope every time.
Thank you for that, Jordan. I really appreciate, how you all are so open to not only helping open source contributors kind of contribute to what you're doing, but in a way that helps them to improve. So I appreciate that work. In terms of highlights, so within the scope of your work and what you do each day, it sounds like, there's a lot of tooling involved. There's a lot of working with issues and things that might not be so pleasant. But what are some of the highlights of your day-to-day or in maintaining the packages that you do?
I wrote this question down and stared at it, and I said, or I finally wrote an answer, which is that the highlight is helping people first and foremost, because that's how my project started, but how open source projects typically start, because you're trying to help yourself first. And so I still or still enjoy that aspect of it. In Pillow's case, seeing a global user base, means we're helping people. But and interacting on GitHub, like Jordan was mentioning, that's very rewarding and satisfying as well. And so that was the main. I have I sat through 8 years of Jesuit education, so I've had this beat into my head about being there for other people. So that's probably part of it for me, but yeah.
Thank you for that. That's super important to be able to, connect in that way and to help, future technologists and people who are just joining open source to really feel comfortable, get their feet wet, and contribute to some of your larger projects. Let's see, Brian, what do you feel? What are some of the highlights? I know that you are both maintaining and within the community space, but what are some of the highlights of the work that you do in maintaining?
Yeah, I mean, on the maintaining side, the highlight is really bringing somebody else in the fold. I'm a big fan of bringing in new contributors. And I know there's a big mantra around good first issues and contributing to projects that you use and stuff like that. And I find that that's kind of disingenuous for the broader developer community, because not everybody can contribute to ESLint or to Vuetify or all these other projects represented, but there are so many other projects that need help. And what I love to do is just become friends with all the new upcoming projects that do need help and could use a scrappy PR or the decisions to be made that completely divert the roadmap. That's usually easier to do in an earlier project, and earlier projects need the most help. So I love party planning and connecting folks to those projects. Because at the end of the day, once you learn how to do a PR, then you could do it anywhere. The challenge is you have to teach the basics, and it's hard to do that when you're trying to board a steamship that's flying to the moon, attached to 3 Teslas. Those projects do need help, but they need very specific help. So just trying to divert traffic, basically.
Thank you for that work. And it's definitely, yeah, for some of the larger packages, it would be hard to really help to bridge that gap. So I appreciate that.
I guess I can talk a little bit about some of the highlights for me working open source. I started 2017 full time. So a lot has changed in the landscape, at least for me over that, as Vuetify has grown. But as what I'm able to actually efficiently do today, some of the things that I enjoy the most are, one, I get to work with really experienced and smart people, way smarter than me. So it's like I get to get elevated to their level by having them around. Even though it hasn't been a thing for the past couple of years, it's going to start coming back hopefully soon at in-person conferences. Really enjoyed meeting and talking with people because otherwise I'm pretty introverted in the office. So it was like an opportunity to kind of get out there and speak with people. And you know, one of the best things for me is being able to kind of geek out on something I helped, you know, was part of and help build, and kind of have like a whole army of people that are eager to talk about something that I love. So it's it kind of gives such a good feeling of, you know, because I love doing everything for free. And then being able to have it up to a quality that is representative of something that would normally cost money. So being able to really interact and see the difference that the product can make with the community is really, really nice. So
Yeah, I wanted to react to something Brian had said, actually. So like you pointed out, not everyone can immediately contribute to something like ESLint or, you know, like larger projects. And that's completely true. But I think that there's a huge intimidation factor that's not accurate around that, and that newcomers think that they can't do anything on these larger projects or older projects or more complicated projects, and so they don't tend to try as much. There's certainly the other end of the spectrum where folks are overconfident and they bite off more than they can chew, and you know, but those are more visible, but I think they're a lot rarer. I think that I think that open source projects are sort of a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step kind of situation, which is that, I mean, I maintain hundreds of projects, and that's not because I'm some wizard who showed up and was just like I have 100 projects or whatever. I started with one, and you know, I just kept working on it, and eventually the maintainer was like, "Here, you do it," and then I maintained a project, and it just kind of kept growing. And I think that there is nothing I want more than a co-maintainer on any of my projects with the stamina to do it for the foreseeable future instead of for just an internship period or a summer break or a weekend. I want a lifetime co-maintainer on every one of my projects. I want more than one, but it's hard to find those people, and it's hard, and it's not for lack of looking. And so I would like, I am on the lookout for ways to encourage people to go outside their comfort zone and try to actually become a maintainer on these sorts of projects that seem intimidating by just doing a little bit at a time and continuing to do that in a sort of consistent way. I think anybody can actually be a maintainer on any of these projects.
You need to get them in on a big project and then be like, you know, because they sort of, bigger projects people are drawn to, and you kind of can recognize the people coming, and you know, you look at them like, this person is going to contribute and possibly is one of those lifers like we just described. And then you point them over to this other thing and try to get them in that way, you know, because as you describe it, you know, that idea appeals to me too. Like, I'll take a half a dozen, 2 dozen, you know, JavaScript. I don't even know JavaScript, but I'll take those projects and maintain them. You know, that aspect is attractive, and I'm sure I'm not alone.
Well, I want to jump in here because I think personally, one of the things that I have experienced as an open source contributor is a lack of diversity within the open source community that provides then kind of this barrier of entry and this lack of confidence that as a Black queer woman, like, is my pull request even going to be seen, heard? You know, we know that open source right now, unfortunately, is kind of a homogenous community, right? And so that not seeing yourself represented within the community sometimes provides that sort of lack of initial confidence to really jump in there and feel confident that your PR is going to be seen, is going to be recognized, is going to be integrated within the code, and that you can consistently kind of add to the open source community in a way that really feels impactful. So I wonder if, and just jumping into some of the pain points that we now experience within our community and within our packages and that sort of thing, like, is diversity for you a pain point? And do you see us kind of moving toward a more diverse space, and kind of how? Just throwing questions out there. Feel free to answer and share and talk about it.
I mean, I think a big part of that is because in order to contribute to open source, you often have to do it in your free time outside of your job. And that, right, having free time is a huge privilege. Not everyone has. Many people have multiple jobs, or they have family to take care of, or, you know, they don't have good internet at home, or whatever it is. And but I think that so that's not something that I can do much about personally. You know, that's more of a systemic problem. But as far as you were talking about, Lyn, about like wondering how your contribution will be received, or, you know, the reception you'll get. The only ways that I know of to sort of telegraph in advance that it's a safe place for anyone to contribute are things that can easily be seen as performative, right? Like a code of conduct, or using main instead of master, or things like that. And, you know, besides those, and building up a track record of good behavior in that regard, I don't know how I can signal to folks that you know, that folks from all backgrounds are welcome, right? And so I'm, if anyone has any ideas, like, I'd also love to hear those.
I think you just said it. The COC and I forgot about the master to main. You know, you do everything that is make it inviting for everyone, and you treat everyone, you know, the same, respectfully. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jordan in that I would join existing efforts for diversity to support whatever I could in that, you know, regard, now that you mentioned it. But I personally, you know, I think as a kid, not a kid, but, you know, as a coming of age in the 90s, like, the internet was very empowering. I feel like globally for everyone, and part of that had to do with anonymity, so you could do anything and be anyone on the internet. And so I would hate to see anyone struggle with confidence in terms of joining projects and doing PRs. I think you also need a welcoming community. I feel fortunate that I had a background with this community of clone CMS developers. It was a rare introduction to open source, and that's probably where a lot of my confidence came from, you know, like a nurturing type environment. So perhaps some diversity nurturing groups or something like that.
Yeah, just tying into something where I think there's something there. There's a Dutch guy who wrote a book quite recently, quite a big hullabaloo. He's trying to move beyond the idea of a white male is a bit privileged, and he actually identified 7 different things. So it's white, male, heterosexual, one rich parent, university study, grew up in an urban area, which it's fairly European oriented, I think, and 2 others. So I think I qualify for all 7. And his theory is that you're more or less sponsored by society, or to put it in a different way, if you say something or do something and it is not particularly well accepted by whatever community you introduce it to, your first thought is not, oh, it's because of the color of my skin or who I am. Because, right, like, we are privileged, that doesn't happen. If somebody doesn't like my idea, then I immediately know, okay, there's something wrong with my idea, right? In which case I know, okay, maybe I need to adjust or adjust my expectations or change my idea. But if you do not have these, 7 checkboxes, then maybe your first thought is, maybe my idea is fine, but I'm just not accepting this community for things that are completely outside of my control. And it is very hard for us to even think about that, right? So if somebody comes with an interesting idea to me and I try my best to explain to them, as Jordan said, we try to leave the impression, no, that's not going to happen. We don't want to lead you on. At the same time, we don't want to beat you down or disincentivize you or just even discourage you from contributing in the future. But I have started to learn, this is a new thing for me, that maybe it gets misinterpreted anyway, and they are just not sure, right? They're not quite sure. Is this about the idea, about the feature request, or is it about me, right? I'm not necessarily, I don't have an answer in the sense, it seems performative to just say, just to be crystal clear, the idea is no good, but please contribute, or I'm not sure you can say it in a way that sounds convincing, but there's something there. And in particular, where there might be something there is the notion that somebody with all 7 checkboxes like me, we are quote unquote sponsored by society, right? Like everybody sees us and goes like, well, probably okay. Whereas somebody who doesn't have all 7 checkboxes, maybe it helps to introduce them, to sort of stand for them, to say, look, if somebody contributed on your project and it turned out not to have all 7 of the checkboxes, and they want to contribute somewhere else, that maybe you you even just thumbs up on the GitHub issue, or give a slight clarification, just in case it shouldn't be necessary, to be clear, right? If the idea is good, the idea is good. I think open source tries to espouse a meritocratic model where the good ideas win, the bad ideas lose, and it doesn't matter who it's not about who, it's about the idea, right? But insofar that there's any concern that the person who says the idea, the person who sends the PR, insofar there's any concern that they are the problem, it can help, and it could help if a contributor and they so happen to be somebody where you're worried they might be worried about it, that you say, look, I have your back. That might help a little bit, right? Because I'm not sure how you guys are, but as a 7 checkbox person, I get this for free. I get this anywhere I go. I'm always okay, right? I'm always vouched for simply by who I am, which I completely undeserved, right? So I owe it to everybody else that I vouch for them. If that somehow, it shouldn't help, but if it does, I'm there for them. I'm not sure how we can get that message out, but that might be a place to start. Right? And then we can move beyond the performative aspects, which, to be clear, I think the fact that everybody's renaming their master branch to main, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's hard to send signals. It's hard to send a message that we are more about the meritocracy than anything else. Anything will help, even if it's only about the fact that we all know this is just a song and dance routine, but we do it because we want to, right? So I like that, but what's the next step after the performative stuff is all done for? So that might be the place to start.
Thank you for that. I definitely think it's that follow through and action after the performative things, which are greatly appreciated. But there are more things, like you said, vouching for folks and really instilling that confidence is a thing. Brian, I'm curious to your thoughts on this conversation.
Yeah, so I just dropped a link to the chat, which is the All in Open Source program. Demetrius, who's on the invite from GitHub, couldn't make it, but she's been running this program for the past year. And it actually ties in a little bit to my talk at the conference, because I 100% agree with everybody who said stuff around privilege and access, but even there's opportunity. And what I've been doing is, so the talk, I talk about HBCUs and how that was a pathway for Black Americans coming out of slavery to learn trades. And it's a weird way to conflate this in an example, but folks were taught how to work in hospitality as a means to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and actually giving people boots. And my whole thing is, if you hang around in communities enough, if you eventually learn how things work and how to uplift yourself in open source. So what I've seen a really good success is review teams or triage teams. So at GitHub, you have a role which is triage, and it gives you ability to just label issues. Because if I was talking to Next.js last summer, and they get 100 issues a week, and they just need somebody just to label it. just to find if it's valid. And eventually, once you read enough issues, you're like, oh, I think I can actually take this on. And it's because you get as more at bats. And again, when it comes down to like even mentioned with like free time, like I don't do any open source nights and weekends. I only do it at work. And I've done that since I was an engineer at my last company and before. And that's because I do have small children and I'm a single income household as well. So I try to put myself in a place that I can do on the job learning, training, and stuff like that. And when folks give me opportunity, like I'll triage your issues and I'll learn. Give me like 6 months, I'll learn, and I'll eventually get a commit into the release. And that's like the approach I've been for onboarding folks in the open source into my communities, is just put them in a position where they can at least see the process and see the privilege. And then eventually, if they have the bandwidth, they'll jump in. If not, then I'll nudge them a little bit more. And if they don't have the bandwidth, like they move on. But it's like having a framework to bring people in, I think is like the biggest thing that I think we probably just sort of learned. Like it might start with code of conduct, might start with contributing MD, but it might also lead into like, okay, now you can label issues.
Thank you for that. And I think there are a wealth of things that we can collectively do, as was mentioned here, to kind of increase diversity in open source and really make sure that the packages that we represent are open and that are friendly to newcomers, and integrate, as Brian mentioned, some different ways for people to level up, learn, and be a second in command. All in open source, just wanted to reiterate, that is allinopensource.org for those who can't see the link in our chat. Definitely visit, definitely see what Demetrius is doing and to increase diversity in open source and to make these pathways more accessible and more available, as was mentioned. We want to move forward into talking about what we owe each other. Now, this is such a loaded kind of what we owe each other, like who owes anyone anything, right? But I want to talk about like how, in terms of your ecosystems, you know, the people who come in and who use your tools, say enterprise level for some of you, enterprise level clients, or just people who integrate your packages into their larger projects. Like, what do they owe you in terms of standards, in terms of tooling, in terms of support? Are there things that you feel that people using your packages kind of owe you, so that you can provide, you know, the best kind of support and things outward to them?
I have a couple answers here. So one of them, so owe is a tricky word, right? Because that sort of implies an entitlement. But also open source sort of tries to create a world that has a different socioeconomic driver than the one in which we live. The world in which we live is driven by capitalism. And so in the open source world, I would say nobody owes me anything but respect, and I don't owe anyone else anything but respect. And we also tend to opt for sort of permissive licenses that have these as is requirements. There's like, it's basically like literally in the license, it says, I owe you nothing. You owe me nothing, right? And so that's it. But because we operate in capitalism in real life, it's people's income can be affected by bugs in my software, and my time fixing those bugs costs me money in some way, right? It's money, it's time I'm not, you know, or it affects my life in some way, right? It's time I'm not spending, you know, maintaining my home or spending with my family or earning income and so on. So I think it's a reasonable argument to make that if you're making profit off of free software, you on some level owe some sort of reinvestment of that profit back into the stack on which you depend. And the US's legal concept of fiduciary duty sort of speaks to that as well. But I think the word owe is a tricky one to apply, because that sort of implies an obligation that doesn't exist. There may be an ethical one, but I probably wouldn't use that term to describe an ethical obligation.
Yeah, I wrote this one down too and stared at it for a while. And then what I finally wrote in the answer for my answer was bug reports, because I know that, which may sound like an oversimplification, but I've many times had the experience of using someone else's thing and coming across something that was small, but I knew was a improvement. So, and sometimes I did something about it and sometimes I didn't. And so I think all the time we owe open source developers our bug reports to try to make their thing better. And I've also had the experience where I've done that for people and the developers, appreciate it. And I've had it done for me and I appreciate it. So that is, again, perhaps an oversimplification, but still significant and important in terms of, given the difficulties with what do I owe, I think is a good answer.
Feels like maybe it should be reciprocal in the sense that, yes, as Jordan said, the license-based services, I owe you absolutely nothing. Please be aware of that. Still, and I'm referring then, this is more the Java community, but the Log4j thing, not that old. And Log4j is entirely open source. Apache is behind that as well. At some point, the Log4j team had a release out, which purported to fix it. And I looked at it and I noticed that it wasn't going to fix it. And maybe you guys remember there were like 3 releases in very quick succession. And it was a little odd because what was happening was that very large companies and individuals were complaining on the issue tracker of Log4j. And it was fairly clear that they thought that the Log4j team owed them an update, right? But they weren't really reviewing that update. Apparently, because we were like, Roel and I actually made a point of reviewing it because we found that interesting and we are responsible for security for both of our day jobs. But I mean, we had the day job to do, time zone kicked in, which meant like we got there like 12 hours after it was released. And we were the first to notice that there was still a mistake in there, which is good. And we told them and they fixed it and that was great. And we weren't actually the first. They got somebody else who said it to them 1 hour earlier. But I still think it's a little weird that there are so many people who feel like the Log4j team owed them an update. But apparently they weren't aware that I would say they reciprocate, and that means you owe them a code review, right? Or you owe them better bug reports because this Log4j thing was easy to find, right? As most security bugs are in the end, but it does mean nobody reviewed it, which we know. I mean, this is a hard bleed, seemed easy, it wasn't reviewed. This happens a lot, but as long as it's reciprocal, I don't mind, right? If a company thinks, look, man, you owe me an update if there's a security issue, and I will take seriously that I owe you reviews, and then I'm okay with it, right? And the second place where that sort of happens is when there are major projects, and this is something we owe to each other, I think. In the end of the day, look around you and look what the community does. So take Lombok, which is in, I would say 20 to 30% of all Java projects use it. If there's another major open source project who makes it really hard to integrate the 2 tools, at some point I just let it go and I say, look, you're going to have to file bug reports with them. Right, there are limits to how far I'm willing to go to support them. And it can be so easy to just look around and take seriously when your open source project is used with other open source projects. Maybe talk to those teams. I love getting contacted by another team and say, hey, maybe we can do something to make integrating our 2 projects slightly easier for our users. Even if I personally don't use their product and they don't use Lombok. You owe, I feel like I owe some effort to the users of Lombok to take seriously stuff that is not exotic. And if like 1% of the user base wants something, okay, well, maybe you send me a PR, open sources in some ways, you scratch your own itch. But if 40%, 50% of our user base wants something and I don't personally need it, I still feel more or less obligated to at least take it seriously, right? Which I think most of us do. But then that means reciprocate to other open source projects, right? If you feel the same way and it's sort of, don't go, well, it's their problem to solve. And then I say, no, it's their problem to solve. And then we sort of leave it in the middle, right? Just, talk to them, figure it out. And I think we can do better on that, right? I tend to assume, well, they've done a really poor job at integrating with Lombok so far. They probably don't care. I think that's, I need to train myself not to do that. I should just talk to them because I'm sure I'm making it hard for other open source projects because I don't know. Right? I don't use every project on the Java Maven repository, right? So that's something I think we owe each other is just assume the best and communicate a little more. That's, maybe more something I should work on myself as well, but it's something I would love to see more in the open source community.
Thank you for that. What about you, John? What do you feel we owe each other Oh, being a very audacious and hairy word.
Well, I've always kind of, as the years have gone on, I've kind of looked at my position because I'm full-time open source. Like, but primarily mean pretty much only contribute to the Vuetify ecosystem because it's become so large. That's where I live most of the time. But I've kind of looked at myself like a politician over the years, and that I don't really feel that anybody owes me anything. And as far as what I owe to them is just to do my best. I've never approached it in a way that because Vuetify is so large, there's always going to be someone that's upset. Usually for me, I just end up approaching it as, well, they're probably having a bad day, probably did something and got yelled at by a boss or late to work or something like that. And most of the time when people are upset and you kind of dig down to see what their problem is, it's really not a problem. They're just having a bad go at it and you're the target. And earlier, whenever there was a couple mentions regarding some of the equity and development contribution and whatnot, and I'll have to say from my point of view, in the past 6 years, really ever seen it happen once where somebody felt that they were disparaged, their pull request based upon something to do with them. And typically is not very, at least from my perspective in my community, not really something that I've encountered. I have encountered plenty of upset people, but usually when you ask them when they're upset, they're upset about something simple. So I like to, it's my job to go out and reach to people to get the resources that I need to do. And I guess that's the only thing I owe to the community would be I would owe to manage things in a way that continue the project going. Everyone has their own part, if they so choose, want to support in various different ways. But at the end of the day, I think that Jordan was speaking to the kind of non-capitalistic nature of open source and how the dichotomy of, you start out to do something free for people, but in order to maintain it, you have to kind of venture into this capitalistic side, which is something that I had to do during COVID specifically. And the only way that I have found to get around that is a much slower path as far as methodically increasing passive revenue over time, as opposed to trying to go full capitalism, I guess, just because for me, that's not the interesting part. So you make a little less, but it's more stable. Because I'd say one of the most difficult things in open source is the instability, or at least potential instability. Had a sponsor yesterday message and said, "Hey, sorry, have to cut costs." And it's like, completely get it, man. If you need anything, let me know. Like, it's completely understandable. So as time has gone on, it's people that were large sponsors would reach out before they were going to potentially. But a lot of times, you're just kind of hoping, hey, if this sponsor drops out, that's $1,500 a month, it's gone. So that's why, for me personally, taking the slow burn approach and really not looking at it as I'm doing. I mean, honestly, if I'm being a little selfish, Vuetify was always kind of about for me, because I was not a good developer. I could design, and I just wanted to do something really fun. So I've kind of approached it from that standpoint of always like, it's about having fun, about doing something really awesome, and everything else just kind of works its way out. There's hard times, but I think that everything kind of comes out in the wash.
Thank you so much for that, John. And I think what I heard most is that we owe each other respect. We owe each other accountability. We owe each other communication. And for those enterprise ready, places that are using our packages, we might be owed some money. So, Tidelift's here to pay the maintainers. And I think that, thinking about what we owe each other and where that support comes in, and especially for those, like John mentioned, who moved into now full-time in open source. I want to talk about, like, to end off, what communities of support are around you all as open source maintainers that help you to thrive? What are some that you can share, or what are some tips that you might have to find communities that support your work within your platform or outside of it and within the greater open source community?
Well, it's a tough one. I can see by no one unmiking that, and I wasn't quite sure what the question was about. I thought you were talking about like other, like Tidelift competitors, maybe. Where else who else is doing things like Tidelift? And then I eventually came up with what you just said. Now made me think of the community that I came up in, in open source was a very supportive community for me, and still is there in some, aspects for me, even though I'm not as involved or involved at all. But Patreon and other things like that. I know there's some others that fund, Patreon's more, I guess, for arts, but I know some projects and developers do use it. So that was my answer for that one. It seems like that you could go in different directions with that question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I thought of the answer a little bit differently when I saw it in the email. And I've been using Twitch as like a community. Like, I've been joining other Discords of live streamers, mainly because there's a lot of folks who just want to break into the industry or learn how to code. So it's Learn with Leon. He does like this online boot camp and has like tons of folks who join just to learn the basics of like JavaScript and web. And I found that community super supportive in the stuff I've been building, like the random tools. I built like a weird front end thing to convert my social cards into like downloadable images, like getting feedback from like this random side projects that I've been building. Yeah, finding streamers who have large communities that have interested people who just are cool to check out your weird code and like weird branches that you're just trying to test out.
That is that. Now that you mentioned it, that is a good one. Things like Reddit and YouTube, maybe not even for open source, but I'm on like YouTube taking guitar lessons, or Reddit for other, where you find communities that are people that are into stuff, is a good answer.
I find it interesting because I hadn't really thought about streaming our program, because we do it in teams, and we do it on basically a set night in the evening. But Brian, so I noticed in your profile that you actually stream twice a week on Twitch. You just start coding for, I assume, a couple of hours, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was the goal for me, because my role doesn't require me to write code during the day. So I've shoehorned my coding time with an audience. So all my open source happens live on stream.
I think it might really help with the inclusion thing, because it does mean that if somebody's worried about what it's like, then hey, just watch the stream, or even interact during the stream and do some co-programming, I guess. So I might try that actually. Our experience positive so far for you?
Yeah, it has. And honestly, I got it from other folks. So like Steve Kladnik was doing like some Rust, intro to Rust stuff. So he's part of that core team over there. But I've also seen like Anthony, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Coding with Anthony, he's similar to Jordan. He maintains 100+ Python packages. And he was doing this before I thought of it. And he just, if you ever want to see what he's working on, it's linked in GitHub. And if you ever want to find out why that PR was a thing, it's linked on YouTube, because he puts all his streams up on YouTube after the fact. And I think for inclusion, like being able to like find the breadcrumbs of how this release was made and having a video to watch, it's helpful for a lot of folks who that's a medium where they learn.
That sounds terrifying to me. So maybe I should do that. I have something about videos and wanting it always to be perfect. You know, live streaming sounds awkward, but it also sounds, the way you're describing it is compelling. So yeah, maybe, or that, that's super interesting and something I'll probably check out just because you folks mentioned it.
Yeah, it sounds like something that would be fun to do. It's more that I'm a little too multitask. What's the word I'm looking for? I do too many things at once for it to seem like it would be good on video, but it might be worth a shot.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I was worried about putting my bank account on the screen or something stupid.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. I've always wanted to do the streaming. I have never done it because I've pretty much worked from home for the entirety of this. Actually, moving into a private office off house campus next week. So I've actually been thinking about. I bought all the stuff to stream. So potentially breaking into that. You were mentioning and asking about other things. Like I've been with Tidelift since like the beginning, since view one. My daughter was sleeping with a Tidelift blankie last night. I'm not even kidding. So yeah, so the things like Tidelift, been very helpful. GitHub, Patreon are all kind of the avenues that kind of are reputable sources where companies will say, okay, I'll put some money to invest into it. I think one of the bigger challenges often though is companies don't know how to handle that financially wise. Like what is that considered to them, right? I get that all the time. Like how do we categorize this? Like sponsorship, what is that? So that's probably something that if I were to say would be, it was one of the things that my understanding was that Tidelift was stepping in between, is to kind of fill that legality or like the process of that, like the mystery behind it. And that is definitely helpful and the things that we kind of need in the community, because in reality, like you said before, even if I don't feel that they owe me anything, they should know that, if their product is depending on software that I maintain, then it would probably behoove them to make sure that, we have the resources. And, but anyway, so yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with getting companies to fund things is that it's very slow to onboard a new vendor, to get the agreements approved, to get the initial money like approved and then allocated and paid out. But once that happens, it's really quick to go to Tidelift or Open Collective or GitHub or whoever and be like, all right, now that I've got this pool of money here, put this here and this here and this here, and that's easy and fast. So it's anything that sort of helps streamline that initial bureaucratic hoops to jump through would be really,
onboarding.
It's helpful. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
you
tying
heard it
into
here
the
first. Yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please.
Tying into the inclusion thing one more time, what I notice is the really, really big projects tend to be able to find some sort of sponsorship outside of Tidelift, just like individual companies who are, for example, take Project Lombok, we get like a couple million hits a month. So if just putting your logo on our site is enough for various companies to sponsor us. However, if you have a much smaller project, here's the problem, right? Most major companies are using 1,000 dependencies, maybe more. If you, as a company, say we want to directly sponsor all of them, that would mean that somebody is renewing, assuming you sponsor yearly, somebody needs to renew like 3 or 4 every working day just to keep up, right? It's never going to happen. So that means that the smaller projects are kind of left out. And that means you need to contribute to a really big major one. And that then feels a little bit scary. And then we get into this endless loop. So one of the things that I think only something like Tidelift can solve is that if you have a much smaller project, and maybe the JavaScript community can, say more about this, because in the JavaScript community, you have libraries that just do one predicate library, right? It doesn't happen in the Java community. But I think it helps that a much simpler, smaller, less popular project still finds ways to get some sponsorship going, right? Because I mean, the Log4j thing showed people kind of expect you to be at least on call for security issues at the very least, right? Or that somebody expects when they send an issue that it's read and it's better for the community, that issues don't just sort of disappear into a void because the maintainer doesn't have time to read them all. So that's just, I don't know of any other answer than Tidelift. And it's very important that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are much smaller projects out there that also have these questions and also need them answered.
Thank you so much for that. I totally agree. And I hope that we move toward a future where, that, again, that sense of, what do we owe each other? We owe each other, that communication and that knowing that, there are sometimes solo developers working on something that is used within an enterprise stack. And so to share that respect, to share that understanding and to share a bit of that profit, is always a good thing. So I want to say that you heard it here first, everyone. Some of your favorite open source maintainers may be on Twitch soon, so look out. I again want to thank each one of you, every one of you, for being here, for sharing your voice, for sharing where we are within the ecosystem as open source maintainers and within the greater open source community. I really deeply appreciate this time, and I hope that you've gained a lot out of our conversation. So thank you so much for tuning in.